gonna wait till it starts because we might
Yeah.
want to use this.
Yes.
Um, but I've been connecting a lot with like people and connections that I've made through Montreal and Toronto. And I haven't had an opportunity to chat too much with anyone local to where I live. So this is going to be like a fun, interesting perspective. I mean, I did have the Babes of Quinny on, which they're like
Yes,
quintessential, like Quinny West.
they
So
are.
there's that. But like an actual entrepreneur who started, a location. You have three businesses at this point, right? So that's
Yeah.
pretty insane. And I did want to say congratulations too, because you, my friend, have three awards on your belt in the last 2 years, which is pretty insane. The top 30 under 30 Canadian tourism, which was last year, right? Young Entrepreneur of the Year, and then this year, New Business of the Year for the Grind and Vine. So clap, clap, clap.
It has been a whirlwind. I feel like my feet are on fire. I'm running around, and then just sometimes these amazing things come about. It makes it easy because I love what I do, right? And I know that's the
Yeah.
cheesy cliche saying, but it makes those like accolades very exciting because it's the community sees the hard work that we put into our cafe as well.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you have the cafe, which is the Grind and Vine. Then you have Russett Photography, which is basically like a personal photography business, right? And
Yes.
then Snappie Photo Co., which is like a pop-up um photo booth, right? That's
Yeah.
how I
Yeah. For
would
like
call it, a photo
festivals,
booth.
events, weddings, all that jazz. Yeah. It was just at like a grade 8
Like,
prom yesterday, and it was like the
no
cutest
way.
thing. As I was checking these pictures, like I wish I had a photo booth when I was that age because we we just I don't know the to see the youth innocence of taking a picture was so cute. I don't know. It usually goes to
Yeah,
like
I mean,
corporate
well,
events, right? So
that's it. But I mean, you're saying youth, but like, aren't you in your 20s?
yeah, true, true. I am
You're like,
24.
I am also youth.
I am the youth. Yes.
I mean, I'm right there with you. I just turned 30, but it's always fun to connect with someone else who's started and being an entrepreneur in their 20s. It's definitely not an easy task, and it
No.
does take a lot of strength and courage to kind of battle through a lot of the challenges that come our way. And I mean, I guess age doesn't necessarily have too much to do with it, because whether you're in your 20s, 30s, or 60s, like, sure, life experience might be on your side, but I think a lot of running a business has to do with experience within building and running a business. Wouldn't you agree?
Very much so. And I feel like for me, it's become like a very big part of my identity. And figuring out your identity is
Mm,
very much that age between like 20 and I'm going to say 30 of figuring out who you want to spend a lot of time with, your interests, your hobbies, like your career, those types of things. So it's been very interesting for me to experience that transition of finding my identity, but also running my business and trying to correlate that my identity is not my business, but that I
hmm.
have an identity outside of both companies, right? So,
Right, which is actually really hard because I feel like you connect so much with your business, like so much of your business is like your life and your livelihood. I feel like
yes.
it's different when you have a job and you could come home and tune out. Like, your business is always kind of on your mind, and like if anything happens, it's your responsibility to like figure shit out. So I feel like there's definitely a difference there. But to kind of like go back on your age, so you're 24 now, which means you started being an entrepreneur in at what, like 21, 22?
When I was 17, actually, I started my photography
No
company.
way.
Actually, yeah,
Oh
and it was
shit.
a government grant that actually started the company called Summer Company Canada, I think. And so it was between the ages of 16 and 30, people can start a business that they give you a grant, a small portion in today's world. And I bought my camera essentially off that grant and went into business. I started begging people to take their family pictures. I said I would never do weddings, and here we are. All I shoot is weddings, so that's what goes through your head.
That's too funny. But like, would you say your main bread and butter is your cafe, the Grinded Vine?
Very much so. So my passion, my hobby, that's also a great company is my photography. It ignites that creativity, probably that flame that you have when you create for brands and you market.
Mm-hmm.
That creativity that comes out in you, that's what comes out in Russett photography. For my job, I do the grind and vine, and the managing of employees, the marketing, the constant email lists, the talking to vendors, those kinds of things. That's my career essentially. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of the toy between the two.
And then how did Snappy Photo come to be? That's more
That
recent, right?
yes, that was like a fever dream, I'm gonna call it. I went to a wedding in Toronto, and they had this awesome photo booth that was on location. And I got talking to the photo booth owner, and I was like, "Hey, like, how popular is this thing? Like, do you love it?" And he's like, "Yeah, like I take it to my own parties, like I take it to like my Christmas parties, and then it goes out every single weekend." And I was like, for the price of it, I was like, it's too good not to have it, because personally, I wanted to take it to my friends' events, my friends' weddings.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends are getting married the past 2 years and going forward. So it's my nice little gift as well, that I gift photo booth services to my family and friends that are getting married as well. So it's just a kind of little fun pocket pocket business, I call it.
Yeah, makes sense. How much was it to buy that photo booth? Because I saw it at there was a business awards here locally in Quinny West, and it was basically like a little pop-up thing, but it did a great job. Like the lighting was good, the pictures came out nice, and it just like, texts it to you. So there's like you don't have to worry about paying for printing and
Yeah.
paper, and you literally just plug it in. It's crazy.
Yes. And so it's about like 5 grand, I guess, in like a startup cost. And then you have your
Yeah,
ongoing software fees, I guess, but it's just a plug and play. So no matter what event, I custom design
yeah,
the marketing and the branding towards it. And then say it's like a lot of companies use it in California for like a brand launch, right? So they'll have a photo booth at their brand launch and then have all those medias of their attendance, right?
hmm. So, what would you say, kind of like coming back? So, we spoke about the fact that you won all these awards, amazing. Do you feel like that has helped you at all in any way, like leverage your business and grow it? Or do you feel like it's just like a cool accolade to have? Because it's, it can go one of two ways. So, I'm curious to know, like, is this something that you're trying to leverage, or is it really just like a badge of honor at this point?
Yeah, I think it does. It does leverage. I think being young and getting these awards definitely shows your valid stance in the business community. It's very hard as a young entrepreneur
Yeah,
to kind of assert that you know what you're doing. Essentially, you'll always kind of be a little bit undermined because of your age. And so these accolades do pose as a badge of honor, like a badge of like knowledge that you've reached
yeah,
this point, that you've achieved that certain level of business essentially. But also it truly
yeah,
powers me to even do more, right? So these accolades like have been like very I've been very honored to be able to get top 30 under 30 in Canada tourist businesses and young entrepreneur of the year, new business of the year. It just it like blows my mind that
yeah,
those awards were that are in my pocket today. But it's at this age of 24 right now, that those are what are in front of me. What can I push towards in the future? Where can I leverage these to either purchase another business or to grow to another store or transfer careers? What does it look like for my personal brand essentially?
Yeah, for sure. It's something that you can pull from and lean on. You have that kind of recognition and almost like authority in this space. Like people recognize the fact that you're doing amazing things. And it's challenging to stand out, even if it's just in like a smaller town, like it doesn't really matter. The fact that number one, I think that your businesses, like especially the one that won, right? It's around the grind and vine, which has only been
Correct.
around for a few years. Whereas
Yeah.
there have been businesses that have been here for like 10, 15, 20 years that like nothing to them, but like they've never won anything, you know? So the fact that you were able to achieve that in such a short amount of time, given your age, I think like that's all stacked one on top of the other is what really is impressive. And like someone like me who's just kind of like recently come into the community, I feel like all of your like up and up and all of your awards that you've received have been in the time frame of me coming and living in this Quinny West area. And it's been so cool and fun to see because like who doesn't want to see others like succeed, and knowing that you're so young, like that's where I connected with you more than
Mhm.
anything. So you're inspiring me, I want you to know that.
So, and I just love getting dressed up truly for these occasions. Like, yeah, I love any occasion to go smooth, to mingle, to network with people. And I think you're very similar. You're such a extrovert, like in those environments. I thrive on networking. And I just like
Mhm.
the events that come out of these award ceremonies, like the QBAAs or the Tourism Association of Canada, I got to network with like over 300 individuals in one night, which for me is
Mhm.
gold. Like that is my prime night. If you were to take me on a date,
I would
take me to a networking event.
Oh my God. Like they can be great, but they can also be overwhelming. I guess what's your strategy when you go to these networking events? Because I think when I first started, I was very focused on like, I want to give the business card and make sure they know who I am and make that connection and try and sell the business. But as the years have gone on, I've kind of changed that. And I'm like, it's more just about like the relationship and the connection and like not necessarily about like signing a contract within the next month kind of
Yeah.
thing, but just building that trust and that rapport with people in the community so that down the line, I'm maybe the first person that they think of when they need any support in like branding, marketing, website, or social. Is that kind of your approach too? Like your business is different. So I'm curious to know what you do.
And that's very much it because for me, I don't know what services they're going to need. I have 3 companies. I also sit on a board of
Right.
directors for Trendval. I
Hmm.
have a lot of different hats that I wear. And when I go into these networking events, I never know which hat I'm going to put on. So I present myself as a person and I present my energy, being very enthusiastic about the things that other people are interested in. So then we can connect on those things. So that's kind of where I approach a networking event is I just want to meet people and see what they're passionate about, why they came to the event, that kind of thing. Just creating a discussion. The one hardest thing I have to focus on in a networking event is a lot of people know me. And they'll come up to me like, "Hey Taylor, great to see you at this event." And I'm like, "No, I like
You can't remember them. Yeah.
names are the worst for me. Like
It's
I'm such
hard.
a face person. I can remember somebody's face. That's the photographer in me. Like I'm very much a people's like face person. But
Hmm.
names, they are locked away somewhere else.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I've been getting a little bit better for like the ones that like I see reoccurring, but for you it's different because like running a cafe, people are coming in and out and you probably have regulars that you recognize, but the few that maybe met you once or twice in the span of like 12 months think they know
Yes.
you. Also because it's such a small community and like you have your face online, like people feel like they know you more than the other way around. It's kind of like an influencer if you think about it, you know,
Yeah.
because like they're out there, people are following them, looking at them, they you feel like you know them, but they have no idea who you are.
Yes.
You know, so
Yes.
it's kind of like that, and it's like a fine line because you don't want to be rude either and be like, yeah, how do I know you, sorry, who are you? But I
Yeah.
mean, that's where my husband comes in for me at least.
Yes.
Because I could be like, oh, this is my husband Ryan, and then like he'll shake his hand and like get the name if I don't have it. So strategy, go with a partner.
Yes. Yes. Well, I wish that was my case. We're trying. uh,
Yeah. I mean, it could be a friend, whatever. I mean, for the most part, I'm there alone anyway, but like for the big things, he'll come, which is nice. Anyways, let's get back to the biz. Yeah.
yes. Sorry.
Okay. No, don't be sorry at all. So, you know, given all of this like background, we obviously have come to the conclusion that you are an impressive person. So, I want to know what is it that you can share with us and the listeners some tangible advice on either like strategies or techniques or whatever you use to help kind of build your brand and to be as successful as you have been over the last few years.
Probably the biggest thing is support systems. And
Hmm.
that whether that be family, friends, a business, like a co-business partner, or creating that network around you that acts as a pillow to reinforce your ideas is probably the strongest power to enable you to do something. I would not have been able to start the cafe without my landlord that believes in me, without my parents who I had to really sell on a business plan to start. My
Right,
sister
because you were
who
so young, you really had to rely on your parents, which is
I
interesting. Not
was
everyone is in
living
that situation.
I
Yeah.
was living at home in their basement and I was like,
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
so like I know I'm not paying rent, but can I go pay rent for a cafe? And that's where like my hard sell came in. And
Mhm.
yes, they were very harsh on the first standpoint of like, oh, do you really want to own a cafe? And is that where you want to go? But that challenged me to look further and look harder and to really think through that opportunity before I stepped in front of it, right?
Hmm.
And us as entrepreneurs, we're very much known for putting the cart before the horse, and kind of running at something full speed, and creating that pillow of people around you that enforce those ideas, helps to bounce those ideas off of. Really make sure that when you do put the cart before the cart going, that you're doing it with um, the proper thought, essentially. So, like my landlord, he's a mentor to me. I think he's one of the biggest influences in my business career.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
but that's because I'm able to go to him with questions that I've had along the way. So when it was starting, I was like, I don't know how this coffee machine like it works. Like I've never used an espresso machine. And he's like, okay, this is my guy. This is who you talk to, and learn from him, right? So it's those people that empower you to create that network, essentially.
Yeah, for sure. Having a support system is amazing. And in terms of like building your brand and that brand awareness, you essentially start from nothing. So what does the journey look like from 3 years ago to now to, opening up this place, not knowing how to even use the coffee machine to now winning awards? Like, how did you get there?
I relied on people, I think, is the biggest thing, and and giving up your personal control and believing in the people that you put the power into. So I hired three amazing staff when I started the cafe, which knew what they were doing, like who knew coffee, who knew wine, and we started there. Which that base knowledge, um, I didn't know anything about coffee or wine, so I hired it out, which can be hard for business owners to think of outsourcing or those aspects of their business because they want to hold the control, right? And for me, I
Hmm.
had to learn that I was not the type of business owner that could hold all that control. I had to trust the people that were experts to bring that knowledge into my company, to bring that the best coffee beans in the Bay of Quinte area, I would say between the Toronto Ottawa corridor, into my building, right? I had to trust the people that
Yeah.
knew coffee to do that. And
I would
that,
almost say you have like a leg up in that sense, though, because I think a big mistake that entrepreneurs do in the beginning, or not necessarily a mistake, but what holds them back is by trying to do everything themselves and not letting go or not delegating on the tasks that they're maybe not the experts on. And
yeah,
every single freaking business book that I've read, that's what it says to do, right?
yes,
And
it
that's
does.
what I've eventually grown to do with my business. But in the beginning, I did it all. And now that I have other people to support me who are the experts who know what they're doing, it's like such a weight off. It's like leave the stuff to the experts, right? Like if that's not your forte, why spend your time and energy on it? So the fact that you did that from the beginning already, it's like, you're saying it's hard for entrepreneurs to let go of that control. You almost practice that from day one, which is pretty honorable because, like you said, it's not easy to let go of some kind of concept or idea. And typically entrepreneurs or people who start businesses, they call themselves entrepreneurs, but they're actually the people doing the tasks, which means it's
Correct.
just like you're doing a job, right? Yeah.
Correct. And I've always tried to tell people, like, people go, "Oh, I didn't see you in the cafe, or I haven't seen you in the cafe a lot." Or and I'm like, that I didn't open the cafe to be a barista. I opened the cafe
Hmm.
to be the grind and vine, to power it in how it needs to be powered, to go to these community events, to network within the individuals, to work on new product lines, to go visit my coffee roaster and like develop a special bean. You know, that is why I became the head of the grind and vine. I didn't become a barista at the grind and vine, and that there's a very different type of business owner that I've tried to differentiate myself. Smaller communities, I would say, like in our Bay of Quinte area, are known to be a doer type of entrepreneurship, and I've
Yeah.
been trying to like translate away from that essentially, and create this uh, like. Like an inspiring business model. Essentially, I inspire my company to do amazing things, and that's what like my team is very high functioning group of women and men that truly make my company better. So I trust the people that are on my team.
Well, that's how you grow a business, period. Like You cannot have a company scale in any which way or expand or be involved in multiple initiatives if you're the one doing every single task, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the definition of like making sure that you have the proper processes and systems and people and support and expertise in place in order to be able to take your business to the next level. And I think that that's where people typically lack, is like having all of those elements in place before being able to take that jump. So the fact that you did that from the beginning, you're like, I'm chilling. Like you're not like basically working in your business, you're working on your business, and it
Yeah.
shows because like you said, it sounds like you're really involved in the community too. And so it sounds like that's something that really helped you kind of build that brand awareness, is that you didn't just like sit back and wait for people to come and get a coffee, but you engaged, you went to pitch to other companies, to interact, to go to their events, etc. Was there anything else like that that really helped get your name in front of other people, aside from obviously having an incredible team to back you?
I definitely, the incredible team helps. One thing I'm going to say about the incredible team is sometimes they're a little too good. And over the past 3 years, four of them have started their own businesses. So,
Oh,
that,
wow.
that inspiring atmosphere creates to put them on the path of where they want to go. Because for me, I know that a barista is not a career move. It's not something that somebody's going to be in
Right.
for 10 to 15 years. I have them for a year, 2 years. It's a transition job, right? And
Mhm.
that's a part of knowing as an employer that it's a transition job. I want to empower them to move further. But also, I'm going to segue this into my community is I want to empower people to do what they want to do. And I feel like that's what my space has become in the past 3 years is you walk in, whether it be two people that are connecting for the past 20 years, they haven't seen each other. They're meeting for coffee after the pandemic. That was a big story after the pandemic, was like people meeting back up and talking. My space became a meeting place, whether it was for a business venture, was it for meeting a friend for coffee. I've had people bring their newborns in and there's like a mom's group. It's become a meeting space, and it means more than just coffee or wine. It's the community aspect. And I think that is what powers it, is for us, our product and service, or our value proposition to a customer isn't the coffee or wine or anything that we serve behind the counter. It's the space that we physically hold.
The space and the experience. Do you feel like, because you mentioned that the pandemic and people wanting to get together afterwards, do you feel like the timing of your opening impacted any kind of momentum for your growth?
Very much so. I bought it in the second wave of the pandemic, so probably the hardest hitting time of the pandemic. And I would not have been able to afford to open a business in the market before the pandemic. Essentially, I wasn't even looking at owning a cafe. I was in a totally different career path. I was in a political science minor, communications and media
Mm.
studies in Ottawa. I worked on Parliament Hill. And what drew me to the cafe was I was able to start this venture of being an entrepreneurship a lot earlier with a lot of barriers reduced. And that environment allowed me to kind of mold the cafe into something that I knew the community needed at a time that was pretty rough for a lot of people, mental health wise. The community didn't have that the community. I can't even think of the word. Like they were lacking that culture
That
of
like meeting
community.
point. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I was
hmm
able to bring that cafe and market it and kind of develop the services around what the community was looking for at that time.
When you mentioned barriers at the time, what barriers are you referring to?
Yeah, so the barriers that I'm referring to is cost. So like to to buy every chair and table in my building would be and to buy the espresso machine would be a very expensive renovation cost. And for me, thankfully, during the pandemic, a lot of businesses were going under and were liquidating
hmm
their assets at a very low rate. So I was able to purchase a lot of restaurant equipment, a lot of brand new equipment from places in Toronto, Montreal, from these high luxury brands in the cafe industry, and bring them into my space at a very reduced price. So I was able to
Wow,
enter
yeah,
the
that's so smart.
industry, yeah, at the right time, in the right place. And a lot of people in my mentorship, like I do Business Connect 20, and in my mentorship, people go, so how do you recreate this? Like, if I was to do this tomorrow, how would you start a cafe? And I said, the circumstances of everybody's start is very different.
Yeah.
And there's not a cookie cutter or a step-by-step guide that can tell you how to take that first step. And for me, it was the people I knew, the network that I created, and that perfect market situation, which didn't seem so perfect at the time, but now you look back and it is.
Yeah, but that's it. I mean, they say that anytime there's a shift in the market, even though it seems like it's down, there's room and there's opportunity. And it's those who kind of seize and take advantage of that downtime are really the ones that are going to thrive. I know an entrepreneur, I would honestly say he's like a freaking serial entrepreneur in Montreal who way back when I would do like I was a hostess and I was a co-check girl at these like supper clubs when I was like 18, 19 years old. And this guy gave me and my sister jobs, and now he owns multiple exquisite restaurants all around Montreal. And they're like Vegas inspired, like
Mm-hmm.
incredible food. Like chefs, basically, like let's say it was like Thai food, like the chefs were from Thailand, and like everything is to the nines, the decor, the design, the food, the atmosphere, the music. It's like he's so detail oriented. And if I were to name you like a list of the restaurants that he's built out, which I'm going to try and get him on the podcast one day, by the way,
Yeah. Yes. 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 I'll be
um,
listening. Yeah.
it's yeah, it's just so inspiring what he's done. And he grew up, with a mom who could barely afford to feed him. He relied on going to, churches to get meals and stuff. So literally came from nothing and has built this crazy empire, has two kids, a wife, and multiple businesses with tons of partners, does tons of like charitable work. And he took advantage. The whole point of why I'm mentioning this is that he took advantage during the pandemic when everyone was freaking out and selling and closing. He was growing, he was building. He's like, I'm going to take advantage. You know what? Everything is closed. Perfect. Let's renovate. Let's build.
Yeah.
Let's expand, And so obviously there's a bit of fear and risk involved in those times because you can't necessarily predict the future. But if you're someone that thinks ahead, you, I guess, are hopeful and you do anticipate that there will eventually be a rise to the fall. And so if you have the means and you can take advantage in that time, which is something like you did, you reap the benefits. So that's really cool. I had no idea that you had gone and like gotten all these liquidated assets. It makes so much sense. Like you said, you were just listening to the times and reacting accordingly. So cool. Good job.
And being an entrepreneur too, like you're like, if you read any book, if you ask career counselors, they'll be like, the one trait that a business person has, or entrepreneurial um, person has, is, are you risk adverse? Do you look for risk, and
Hmm.
do you handle risk very well? And I feel like that translated in that situation, and I feel like that's one trait that I would say everybody I meet at a business networking event is very risk adverse. They know the risk of entering a business and the times that are ahead. Right now, like an economic slowdown, that kind of thing. We know that's happening, but we look at it in a different lens. We look at it, how can we change and evolve our business? How do we
Hmm.
innovate our product that it reaches the customer at this certain time?
Yeah. So from an investment standpoint, what did that look like? What was the initial investment to get all of the equipment, do the renovation, and basically like up to the point where you served your first cup of coffee? What did that investment look like and how long did it take you before becoming profitable?
Yeah. So, good question. I would say for me, it was about like 70 or $80,000 in actual cost of goods. We added a whole new patio, which was a big bulk of that. Um, but also at that time, we got to capitalize on a lot of government funding for tourist experiences. So the patio was a collaboration with the city of Quinte West that allowed us to use the space lease free, which would normally be at upfront cost of about $3,500. which we got to save and invest that further into our community and into that space, right? So
Mhm.
it even further shows you the cost breakdown of, I did invest a large amount of money into the cafe, which $80,000 at 20 years of age, that's probably more student debt that I had at the time uh, than I did in my actual pocket, right? So
Mhm.
I leveraged every piece of penny that I've saved from when I was a child, which I come from a family that um, is very, I would say, financially savvy. My mom and dad, my grandparents, they they all have taught us money saving techniques, or like how
Yeah.
to. It was a very transparent family about money, and
Mhm.
I feel like that was one of the biggest benefits of growing up in my family structure, was we didn't shy away from talking about those big ideas of, like, I wanted to go for this, I want to put this money here, and that's where when I decided to invest in the cafe, I was projecting that after 3 years we would grow into the like the positive side of business. So we would just be coming up to breaking even today, based on how hard the pandemic would hit. But
Mhm.
actually, within a few months of opening, we were actually had already broken even on our initial renovation
Investment.
costs,
Yeah.
investment, and we were already in the positive. So uh, you can
Amazing.
make a business plan, you can financially scheme and financially project how your business is going to do, but the the market takes it in a totally different direction. And for me, it was a perfect storm of the ending of a pandemic and people wanting to socially gather, and a brand that had kind of become a part of the community. And
Mhm.
and it was that perfect storm that accelerated us into that financial growth that we needed to kind of power us through, essentially.
So cool. So cool. I love hearing about this stuff. Everyone's story is so different, and it's like this is just like a lesson for anyone listening to pay attention to what is happening in the world and do your research, right? Lean on the people who are around you. Don't be afraid to ask questions and have people support you if that's what you need. And then also just pay attention to the market, and if there are other opportunities. Like you said, you leaned on government loans and to make sure that you can get things up and running, which like those things are available. Not everyone realizes it because money obviously is a huge factor, especially when opening up a physical space, right? A service-based industry might be different, but even if you're doing like CPG, or you're selling goods online, you have a product to sell, you need inventory. So,
Yeah,
I mean, there's different ways to do it now, and drop shipping and shit. But, anyways, point
yeah.
is, money is a thing. It's a big thing. So, look at the resources out there. The government has a lot to offer, and banks too, I guess, right?
Yes, and I sit on the board of director for Trendval, which is a small business development corporation for the government of Canada. And that is exactly what we do. We lend to small to medium sized businesses in our catchment area of Bay of Quinte, Quinte West, all of Hastings County. Um, and it is like that is where I see these smaller businesses that come to us and have those innovative ideas that are truly looking for what is needed in our area.
Yeah, makes sense. So you mentioned Trendbell. I know you're involved in a lot of different things, right? You sit on the board for Trendbell, Trenton DVIA, which is like the downtown area, and then Gift from the Heart organization. It's a lot. It's a lot of work. Like I sit on the Prince Edward County Board of Directors, and like that overwhelms me, and it's not even that big of a commitment. That with balancing my business and the podcast, like what's your secret? Like how do you find that balance and be able to really commit all of yourself to these many initiatives?
I think that's a if you ask anybody, any of my friends, they'll tell you that I run around like a chicken with my head cut off. I'm always on my way to something else. I'm always running to something. You are catching me in my apartment. This is probably the longest I've ever been here during the day. Uh, I I love to keep myself running to something. That's just who I am. And keeping that to-do list stacked. It keeps me energized. It keeps me empowered. And being on these boards kind of service they serve a different part of my identity. So the Gift from the Heart oral health charity, I get to help individuals that don't usually access dental care in Ontario and the greater Canada. And that is something that I'm very passionate about. One of my biggest investments in thanks to my parents, were braces. I have really nice teeth, and it's a source of happiness that I get from being able to help people access that same care that they deserve. I like it is very expensive to go for dental care in today's society. So that is one aspect. Selfishly as well, Trendval is a business network. It's a way to network with people that I wouldn't normally get myself in front of. I've been able to sit on a board of directors with people in the manufacturing industry, in accounting, law. Those are not normally people I would usually interact with in my sphere of influence and business. Like, I'm usually in food and hospitality industry. Getting to know and to understand the complications and the successes in their industries helps me further understand how I can succeed in my business, essentially.
Do you ever sit in some of those meetings and then like people start talking about whether it's like accounting or governance and this and that, and you're just like, what the hell are they talking about?
Yeah, there's a steep learning curve in the trend, especially in the Trendval board of directorship, because there's an analogy for
Yeah.
everything. Like, everything is like down to a three-letter
Like
uh,
acronyms?
acronyms. Thank
Acronyms,
you.
you
That's what
mean?
I wanted to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
So everything's an acronym, and it took me like a year to kind of be like, oh, that's what that acronym is for, and now I'm catching what's happening, and that's a very interesting
Finally catching
process.
on.
Yeah, I'm like, wow, it's
Yeah.
been a year.
No, I mean, I can relate though too, because for me, sitting on the Prince Edward County Board, this was my first board experience. So I didn't really know what to expect. I was also super transparent with them. I was like, hey, like, I'm here to support the community. This is what I can offer. I don't really know what else I could support with other than the fact that I have knowledge in like marketing, branding, and design, and like communication. So if you can leverage that for me, then I can learn from you guys, and then hopefully it's like the perfect storm, because there is like a skills matrix that happens, right? Like you said, someone has to be like in law or in finances, and then the communications aspect, whatever. So to have that balance on the board, because we need like equal representation, to have a bunch of different minds and expertise when communicating about these important topics to like best serve our community. So I have to say, I was definitely intimidated when I first started, but at the end of the day, everyone was just like super nice and super chill. And like the fact that they were leaning on me as like the youngest person, I'm sure you can relate. Like, I was, I think, 28 when I joined the board. Yeah, it felt kind of weird because they're all in like their 50s, probably around. Yeah, definitely a different like age difference, but I think it's also important, like, as young entrepreneurs, to represent. And it's like, it's not just about like people who have like years of experience, but also young entrepreneurs who are doing it right now, like in the thick of it, who have a totally different perspective. And I guess that's what they had seen in me. I'm sure that's what they see in you, is like having that youthful perspective, and also just being able to kind of like leverage what we know versus what they know, because the generation gap is definitely a thing.
Yes, and that's very much it. You have a skills matrix that you want to fulfill in your board of directors, and in today's
Mm-hmm.
world, it's very hard to fill that board with competent volunteers. Every single organization in our Bay of Quinte area probably does not have a full board. It is very hard to find volunteer board of directors in today's world. Everybody has something to do, and it's a very busy time, essentially, for people that would normally volunteer their time. So a lot of these organizations, let's say the Belleville General Hospital or subsidiaries that have board of directors, are having a hard
Mm-hmm.
time finding volunteers. And I definitely urge, like, anybody in the business community or in any community that has that little extra time, that wants to connect with their community in a certain way, find an organization that kind of fulfills that void for you, and join their board of directors or join a volunteer um, aspect, and it truly makes the world a better, like, makes your community a better place, for sure. I know,
Yeah.
making the world a better
Yeah,
place,
I
that was a
agree.
very cheesy saying that I just said.
But it's, I mean, it's true.
It is. It is.
It is true. Speaking of making the world a better place, what's next for you? I feel like you've already achieved so much at this age. What, like, do you have any future plans, future businesses, or growth plans for your existing businesses? Tell me everything.
Yes. For me, growth is something that's a little bittersweet, I guess, because I grew so fast so quickly that I lost myself in the process, I feel. So I've
Hmm.
really worked for the past summer to re-find my identity as a person, as a business owner, and work to reestablish that boundary essentially between my company and myself. And my employees will tell you I sometimes show up to the cafe when I'm totally unnecessarily needed, and it's because it's my baby. It's my like I gave this thing life, right? And it's like
Yeah.
giving it to the babysitter, and you know that babysitter will give good care, but never as good care as you would care for it as well. So
Hmm.
that is something that I have really been working hard on is finding new hobbies and ways to advance myself. So I took up cycling this summer, and I absolutely love cycling. I'm an avid skier, those types of things. That's a personal growth for my
Yeah.
for my business side as well. I'm always looking for new opportunities that may present themselves. I'm on business forums. I'm on talking to other business owners about potential growth plans almost on a weekly basis, if not daily. Uh, and seeing what opportunity is going to razz me up, what is going to power me to reach that next level. Because if I'm not, that's a big thing is a lot of people take growth plans because it's growth in front of them. It's the easy path forward. It's the next step. It's what's expected of you. And for me, that would have been a second location for the grind. And for me, that doesn't
Hmm.
razz me up. That doesn't power me to do something. That really doesn't do it for me, right? For me, I'm looking for something that's gonna to fit in my cookie cutter of what I want as a next project, essentially.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I want to know, like, you mentioned you were involved in like forums and stuff and connecting in these communities. For someone who maybe doesn't have the same involvement as you in these different organizations, like we all know, like you could join a chamber of commerce, you can go to networking events, but what about these like business forums? What advice do you have for someone who's looking to make those connections and just have an ear on the ground when it comes to the business community where they live? What's your suggestion for them?
One of the biggest things I'd say is like coffee chats, just asking somebody to catch up or talk about the industry. So for me, it's not necessarily meeting other food and hospitality industries. I meet with other realtors. I meet with people in the marketing industry. I meet with hotel owners. You know, I am trying to uh, get a different opinion essentially from my own industry. And so I'll just ask them to catch up and talk about the industry or look at next steps. And then in that conversation comes out potential opportunities. I've been in conversations with plenty of people that are like, "Hey, why don't you do this? Why don't you buy this or start this? Because I think this is a hole in the market." And I'm like, "Oh, well, that's an interesting proposal. Let me think about it for a little bit. Let me workshop it, right?" And it gets
Hmm.
my wheels turning, right? And it was somebody else's idea of where they saw me going, right? Because a lot of us
Hmm.
try to find that internally, but never can put put your finger on it, right? We can't see ourselves doing something when somebody else recommends it. I think it starts your gears turning essentially. So I ask for people to just sit down and have a coffee and just chat about life, and then things come up like, "Hey, why don't you do that?" And I'm like, "Sure, let's
And
give
where,
it a
so
try."
where do you connect with these people? Is it just like through social or people
Oh,
you've met before? Do you do like cold connections? Like, how does that work?
yep, just socials. DMing people on Instagram is probably the best. I would say best reaction because
Hmm.
everybody's on Instagram nowadays, and also the people that I'm wanting to connect with have a big influence or big um, Instagram footprint, I would say. So that's kind of the demographic of people that I'm looking to talk to, essentially, because that's the type of business owner that I am.
Fun. Fun, fun, fun,
Yeah.
fun, fun. Okay, on the topic of advice, I always end the podcast with what I call the mindful minute. So this is your opportunity to share any piece of advice, something that you've learned throughout your life so far, could be business related or personal, whatever, something you want to leave the people listening with today.
Ooh, that's a good question. What do I want to? Oh, easy. Um, like the one thing I'm going to leave with you today, Alyssa, is that you got to ignite the flame in yourself. And that's got to be evident. And so one of the biggest things that like I get as a compliment is, Taylor, we see how passionate you are about your community or about your business. And it's easy because it lights the fire underneath me. And if you don't have that fire lit, it's hard to convince other people to do the same. So it's hard for me
Mm,
to go to work to convince my employees that their fire is lit and that we need to make the bonfire bigger if I don't have the flame already lit in me. So I show up to my workplace every day with that fire lit, with that passion inside me. I try to instill the same in my employees. And I think that's the biggest thing that I give to business owners. You don't have a day off. There's not a day that you can turn off. You have to wake up every day and ignite that flame in yourself and truly find that passion of why you're doing it. And yes, that might get lost in your travels of entrepreneurship. There's a lot of hard days in business, but
mhm.
the flame gets a little smaller, but it's always lit. That's what I'll tell you.
Okay, I love that. I was gonna like follow up and I was like, I don't usually follow up with these, but I was like, what happens when the flame goes out? I mean, if it's out, you're in trouble, but you're saying, it might get dim, but keep it lit. I think that's a great piece of advice. Thank you for sharing. Let us know where we can find you on social media.
Of course, at the Grind and Vine on Instagram, at Russett Photography, at Snappie Photo Co. And then my personal brand is at Russett underscore at T underscore Russett is my personal social media. So I'll see you guys all there, and it's been lovely to chat with you today.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, guys, that's it for us today. We'll catch up next week. Bye.